number 15. Is there a motion on the consent calendar? Motion by Senator Berryhill. Please call the roll.
Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Bates. Bates, aye. Berryhill. Berryhill, aye. Block. Galgiani. Galgiani, aye. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Jackson. Mendoza. Mendoza, aye. Watkowski.
Aye.
Watkowski, aye.
Jackson, aye.
Jackson, aye. There's 8.
Sorry? 9? 8? The consent calendar has 8 votes. We will hold that. Oh, it's closed. Yeah. We'll hold the roll open for the absent members there. We'll move now to item number 5, AB 316. Good afternoon, Assemblymember Manshine. Nice to see you. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members.
Back to item number 5 now, AB 316.
I would like to open, Mr. Chair and members, by thanking both you and your staff for working with me and my staff to ensure that the amendments would make this bill stronger. Large-scale animal cruelty cases, such as animal fighting and hoarding, create unexpected financial hardships on the authorities maintaining the animals. Unlike other investigations, such as drug busts, animals are an expensive piece of evidence requiring care, food, and attention. The ASPCA estimates the average animal cruelty case consists of 461 animals at a cost of $26 per animal per day. The average case lasts around 45 days, leading to an average cost exceeding $500,000. This surge of animals can also exhaust local responders. Existing law allows an animal control department, state or federal law enforcement agency to request the assistance of vets licensed in other states to care for the animals seized in a cruelty case. AB 316 will allow for the establishment of a temporary shelter facility to house only the seized animals for up to 60 days, which must conform to all minimum standards of animal care for animal shelters. The latest amendments enhance oversight by the California Veterinary Medical Board by requiring out-of-state veterinarians to apply for and receive approval prior to entering the state if called upon. The approval of these applications will be at the sole discretion of the board. Additionally, these veterinarians must deploy under a board-approved nonprofit organization. I have been working with the CVMA as well as the Veterinary Medical Board to work towards bills that all parties are comfortable with, and in fact, I introduced AB 316 and 317 as 2 separate bills at the request of the board. I'm happy to continue working with the VMB and CVMA as we continue to move both this bill and AB 317 through the process. Here to speak on behalf of AB 316, I have with me Kevin O'Neill of the ASPCA and Henry Brzezinski with the California Animal Control Directors Association.
Very good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. First, thank you to your staff and to you, Mr. Chair, as well, for the work that was put into these amendments. Kevin O'Neill on behalf of the ASPCA, as Assemblymember Mainshine has discussed, the need for assistance when these cruelty cases hit can overwhelm local resources. And AB 316 is essentially designed to be a safety net. It's not intended to infer that there are not enough local veterinarians in California to do this work. In fact, local law, state law already mandates that these local veterinarians are the ones that sometimes report when there's an animal fighting case that they presume is happening. And what AB 316 is designed to do is essentially give local animal control officers who are on the front lines of investigating these cruelty cases the safety net of being able to call upon out-of-state veterinarians when their local resources are overwhelmed. The framework that we've designed AB 316 after is very much the same as the framework that's been designed and already in current law that allows doctors to come into California to assist with low-income health fairs. It provides the board with extreme oversight to be able to say yes or no if a veterinarian applies to come into California. We simply cannot come in unless we're invited and unless the board approves us to come in. And that is something that we've always been advocating for in this bill from the very start. We've let the opponents know that we are fine with oversight. We think that it's reasonable to have oversight. Another important element of this bill is that those folks who come in have to do so at their own cost. So this is not an attempt by veterinarians to come into California to establish a base of business in California and to start treating animals that aren't impacted by a cruelty investigation. The temporary shelters can only house those animals that are impacted by the investigation and can only exist for a short time. And groups like the ASPCA and other nonprofits who sponsor these types of ATF deployments are the ones that foot the bill for the deployment and the sheltering of those animals. So we're very thankful to the author for his work on this and trying to bring all the parties together, and we appreciate your work on this as well, and we look forward to an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Others in support?
Good afternoon, Chairman Hill and members of the committee. My name is Henry Brzezinski. I am a board member of the California Animal Control Directors Association. We represent the majority of county and local animal control and animal services agencies throughout California. We are on the front lines. We deal with animal cruelty on a regular basis, as well as dogfighting and cockfighting here in California. I personally have been exposed to a situation where our agency could have utilized additional veterinarian assistance, a situation with 90 horses. It was overwhelming to our agency and quite costly as well. I've worked in my 32-year career in animal services and animal welfare with national organizations, and they've been able to assist us in some respects, but in many of the states that I have worked in my career, they weren't able to bring veterinarians in from other states to assist us. And sometimes local veterinarians do not want to get involved because they have had contact with these prior offenders in some sort of way. A livestock case comes to mind that I was involved in with. Two of the veterinarians said, I don't want to go on this individual's property. We've had contact with him. He's abusive. He won't actually, one situation where he actually locked the person in the property. We were ultimately able to prosecute this individual. So we're very much in support, the State Animal Control Directors Association, of this legislation. I think it's very important for California and for the care of the animals in California. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for the testimony. Others in support? Seeing no one, is there anyone here in opposition to the bill? You can sit. There you go. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Christina DeCaro, representing the California Veterinary Medical Association. I would probably rather wrestle a live bear than oppose two mainshine bills back to back. It's not my favorite thing to do. He's a very good friend. He's been very good to us. Fundamentally, the CVMA just has some concerns about unlicensed veterinarians practicing in California. And the bill states that veterinarians from out of state would be authorized to come into California to assist with one of these cruelty or animal fighting cases when the situation, quote, overwhelms the response capabilities of California's veterinary healthcare practitioners. We feel that there are 9,000 licensed California veterinarians in the state, and we think they would be quite willing to help out in these situations. Throughout our negotiations with the author and the sponsor, we just don't feel that that case has been made, that we can't handle things here in California with our resources. We have suggested to the sponsors that the ASPCA veterinarians should just consider getting a license to practice in the state of California. That would allow them to be in compliance, of course. And it's a 100 answer, multiple choice test that can be given at any computer in California, in Mexico, in Canada, anywhere in the USA. It's a multiple choice test, as I say, and readily available. Or you could do the temporary licensure provision exam, a 3-day course that's also available in lieu of having to take the test. Essentially, the sponsors have told us they just do not want to have to take the test. So in light of that, then the Veterinary Medical Board is going to have to construct a brand new approval process for a handful of these individuals who will have to be participating in veterinary events in California. This is not restricted to the ASPCA. This could also open it up to other groups who would like to come in. We also have some concerns about the Veterinary Practice Act being waived so that the premises veterinary care may be happening there, but there may not be an opportunity for the board to come in and levy some sanctions against those folks. So for these reasons, unfortunately, the CVMA is opposed.
Very good. Thank you very much. Others in opposition?
Good afternoon. I'm Anne-Marie Delmanayo. I'm the Executive Officer for the California Veterinary Medical Board, and while the board has not had an opportunity to review and consider the most recent amendments to AB 316, the board is on record as opposing the measure as of May 15th. The board's concerns surround the lack of necessity for creating an exemption to both licensing and enforcement for veterinary care. As the state agency responsible for protecting the public's animals from negligent or harmful acts by unlicensed or underqualified veterinarians and monitoring the facilities where veterinary care is provided, exceptions and exemptions from regulatory oversight must only be considered in cases where access to professional services is significantly limited and or where California licensed practitioners do not possess the expertise to address this particular need. The board has not been provided information demonstrating limited access or a lack of expertise by California licensed veterinarians to provide veterinary forensic services. Exempting veterinarians from licensing requirements places the public at risk, as the board has little or no enforcement authority to respond to complaints or acts of negligence. The most the board can do to intervene in these cases is possibly levy cease and desist letters or small fines. In addition, the board has encountered legal challenges responding to complaints about unregistered facilities providing veterinary services. Without appropriate veterinary oversight, recently, amendments to Business and Profession Code Section 4809.5 restricts the board from entering these facilities that are not registered and ensuring that minimum standards are met. The board's inspection authority is limited if these particular premises are exempt from oversight. There are other means by which these practitioners from out of state may come into California and practice for a limited time, and that is through the temporary license process. Requiring a temporary license provides the board with appropriate oversight and the public with recourse should an unfortunate or adverse event occur. The temporary license also ensures that entry-level competency is measured, specific to California species and environmental factors. And the background check of licensing in other states is conducted by the board prior to entry into the state. The amendments to AB 316 introduce a new approval process, not only for unlicensed practitioners, but also a registration process for agencies sponsoring veterinary healthcare services. As such, the amendments create an additional workload to the Veterinary Medical Board and may require additional resources. The Veterinary Medical Board will consider these amendments in the next few weeks at its next board meeting and looks forward to continuing to work with Assemblyman Mainshine and the sponsor on future amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Others in opposition? Seeing no one, bring it back to the board. A question, and I guess it's the issue of issuing a temporary license. What's the time frame to do that? I mean, if you're, my thinking is that the necessity of the legislation is because this is something that happens, you know, the location, you find it, the need is there, it's immediate.
Right.
And you can bring someone in if there's, obviously the Humane Society internationally would maybe have the resources to bring those together. And so I'm just wondering about the timing of that.
It's a very good question, and we've addressed that with ASPCA in terms of most of the licenses are issued in a matter of about 30 days from the time we receive the application. So 30 days may not provide, you know, a sufficient time frame within which you could bring a practitioner in here to be able to provide these forensic services. However, the board is capable of issuing a license in a much quicker time frame. But we would have to have some knowledge of the individual's licensing history in other states. So to be proactive in this matter, if the ASPCA had a group of veterinarians that they wanted to perform this work, what we would encourage them to do is have those individuals licensed ahead of time so that there is this kind of readily available pool of individuals that have already been vetted in California and can provide those services in a timely fashion.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good answer. Appreciate that. Anyone else in opposition? See no one, then we'll bring it back. Yes, Senator Berryhill.
I'm afraid to ask a question here.
It seems like everyone else went to get their eyes tested or something.
Yeah, they did.
Is that what happened?
Everybody else took off. I'm just curious. I mean, I can imagine that when you have just a cataclysmic problem, that there are times when this is probably needed. But I guess my question is, how often is that really required? Do we have enough veterinarians here to take care of the problem, or where do we sit, you know, overall? I mean, how often does this happen?
I mean, cruelty cases are not reported to a central database, so it's difficult to know exactly how many investigations are occurring throughout the state and how often this might come up. Through our experience, when you have a situation where there is a cockfighting bust or a dogfighting bust, and you have upwards of 300 dogs or 3,000 birds, it can overwhelm the local resources. So I can't speak to the specifics of how many events are happening and whether or not these events would arise to the need to call in out-of-state veterinarians. I think that is one of the premises behind the bill, is that it's intended to be a safety net. The approval process, we actually very early on in discussions with the board mentioned, why don't we get temporary licenses for these individuals? And we were told by the board that they could not respond in a quick enough time to give us those licenses. So we got away from that idea and went ahead with the new framework, which is modeled after current opportunities for doctors to come in for health fairs. So we're more than willing to be regulated and to go under the administration of a board. If the board thinks that they can administer temporary licenses quickly, we're fine with that. If they want to be able to inspect facilities, we're fine with that. The problem is that, as the analysis points out, state law requires the board to inspect 20% of regular facilities in the state, and the idea of adding temporary shelters onto that might not prove to actually have those temporary shelters inspected. But if the committee wishes to include inspections, we're fine with that. All of our facilities that we adopt and construct meet the minimum standards. Our veterinarians have looked at California minimum standards, and they say they can meet them. And so that's why we've put in the bill that they have to meet those minimum standards, and that those the requirements are board regulations. And the reason we didn't put board regulations in the law is so that they don't become statute, and that makes them inflexible. If something comes up, the board wouldn't be able to change them. So all along, this bill is really designed to be used in a worst-case scenario. And the language of overwhelm is the exact same language that BMP 900 uses for disasters. And so we're using existing models and existing language from current law to try to give animal control officers that safety valve should it happen.
Yeah, I would imagine that it doesn't happen often, but when it does, I think you'd want to have a safety net out there, because it'd be overwhelming. Dog fights, cockfights, that's a lot of animals. So, okay, well, thank you.
So I guess just more of a comment. I understand the cruelty incidents that could occur, but what you're telling me is that you don't know of an instance where there's that much of a need or a history of that much of a need. Is that correct?
I can't speak to a specific incident in California where the need arose to the point, because there wasn't the opportunity to call outside. We know that in El Dorado County, there were 90 horses that were seized from rescue that took them from Lassen County, and Lassen County refused to, from my understanding, to do an investigation, so El Dorado County ended up saddled with the cost of caring for those horses. That was a potential opportunity, if this existed, where they may have been able to utilize the resource. But again, I don't see this as something that's going to bring an influx of out-of-state veterinarians into California.
Let me ask a question. Historically, up till now, has there ever been an instance where there wasn't enough veterinarians from the state of California to handle the incident? Yes or no?
I mean, because we don't report cruelty incidents, it's hard to tell. So I don't know.
So, leaning towards no. So I guess the concern I have, it's not the cruelty incidents or to the animals. Obviously, you want to have as many individuals to help them there as possible. But the precedents that you're going to be sending, that you're going to be allowing a provider from another state to not be licensed in the state of California, and I don't know if I'd want that for a dentist or physician. So it just seems like it's just a bad precedence to set, unless there was a great need, whether it's, if there was a historical history that has happened in the past and you're far short of the number of veterinarians, or if you see in the future. So that's my only concern. So.
Senator, maybe could I address the first part, at least, of your concern? And I think it's somewhat, it maybe builds a little bit upon what Mr. O'Neill said, is typically in these cases, the local district attorney is deciding whether or not to file charges, which is one reason why we don't have a centralized database. So one of the factors that we've heard, and it's correct that this is indirectly, but we have heard from local law enforcement is one of the things they consider in all their cases is how problematic is it going to be to prosecute it, right? In cases where you have drugs, for example, or you have stolen electronics, it's very easy to store that. But in these cases where you've got 90 horses or you've got 300 dogs, that's going to be an issue that local law enforcement is going to take into account whether or not to even prosecute the case. So I think one of the things that could happen from this is that it would give law enforcement a resource if they thought that, look, my local county is just unable to handle 90 horses. We would still be able to do something about these large-scale cruelty cases. And I agree, kind of maybe not, I don't know. But it would be something in there that at the end of the day, this really is it's a safety net. It's not something that's going to dramatically
I agree it's a
change
safety net.
anything.
I don't know if that's going to change behavior of law enforcement to go after, somebody who's abusing animals. I think it just unfortunately it's not the highest priority in what they want to do. So, I mean, my only concern is just a precedent setting that it is setting to bring other providers from other states. And ultimately, where is the public's protection? I mean, who does the public complain to about these particular providers? That's my concern.
Yeah, I hope this doesn't happen often, but I know that in one of my counties we had this happen, the outrage of the public in wanting to try to deal with these poor creatures who have been malnourished or abused or what have you. It seems to me that I don't think it hurts anything to have a group of people who are committed to this, many of them volunteers, many of them very devoted to animals, to have that resource available. Hopefully we don't need it very often, but I think it's not a bad idea to call upon people who would be very willing and able to help deal with the crisis that sadly happens more than it should. But I'm not, I in the course of my 40 years with my county, I can only think of 2 such incidents, but that's too many. And if there's a group that's willing to help these creatures, I certainly can't see why not. So I'd like to move the bill, if I may.
There's a motion. Any other comments from committee members? I'm going to lay off the bill today. I have, oh, sorry. Where am I? Here we go. It turned itself off. Does that mean it doesn't want to hear me? Probably. Anyway, I think we need you to do a little more work in terms of some evidence showing and a protocol, so we're all very clear on how and when it would happen. We had an incident in Orange County. You may be familiar with it, Assemblymember Mainshine, where there was what do you call people that sell snakes, the reptile center, and the snakes had been horribly abused. Some, died, and others were on top of each other. It was pretty horrible. But we were able to accommodate that with our animal care center. So I'm not sure when the need would arise that you would have to reach out, but I think some sort of a protocol in it that set a standard, and then a few more instances where you have evidence to support it, and then it has a better road to go. So, but with that, I'll call the roll. Oh, would you like to close? Are you good?
And we'll definitely willing to do that, Senator. And I really, in particular, want to thank Senator Jackson for comments. I'd use those comments as my close.
Yeah. Motion is due pass to appropriations. Hill, Bates, Berryhill, Berryhill aye. Block, Galgiani, Galgiani aye. Hernandez, Jackson, Jackson aye. Mendoza, Wachowski.
That's 3. We'll put it on call.